Greetings everybody, my name is Tommy the Keyblade Master and welcome to my channel. Now today I'm going to be doing a response to one of MatPat's latest game theories based on video game movies. Now I didn't disagree with anything he said, from the fact that most of them are crap to the fact that a lot of them have been used to hide tax shelters for tax fraud. That's all true. I have nothing against that. However, I do disagree with him on the fact that there is no such thing as a good video game movie and that there can't be. And I'm going to be talking about that just from an amateur perspective, amateur movie critic. I noticed there are three ways to do a video game movie. There is the American way, there's the Japanese way, and then there's the right way. Now, the right way actually was done probably first in one of the very first video game movies, and no, it wasn't Super Mario Brothers. It came out a decade before Super Mario Brothers, definitely had an impact on the whole industry, because the fact is I'm going to be reviewing a Mega Man game that has a character named in honor of this movie. And it's also in a few Kingdom Hearts games because it was made by Disney. I'll tell you the name of that movie later if you haven't already figured it out. You might want to go have someone throw a frisbee in your face because, well, that's the third clue. Anyways, let's talk about the different ways of adapting a game to a movie and why a lot of them don't work out. First, we'll look at the American way, the way the American studios handle it. And their philosophy has been, well, we can't just get the gamers in there because we need a bigger audience, so we have got to adapt the crap out of these games. So they kind of go back and rewrite a lot of the game scripts, the game scenario, and turn it into something that the gamers oftentimes don't recognize. The worst offender of this is probably Super Mario Brothers. Mainly, I have to question, number one, Super Mario Brothers was based on Western storytelling. Jack and the Beanstalk, Alice in Wonderland. And then you just threw in this character that Miyamoto created and some enemies from more Japanese folklore, and you got Super Mario Brothers, and everybody and their grandmother has played Super Mario Brothers at one point. I can guarantee it. So it didn't really make sense to do what the American studios did when they adapted that movie, which was to basically take everything that was about the game out of it. Rather than this happy, colorful, surreal world, it was this dark, gloomy dinosaur planet type thing, dystopian. It just really didn't fit with the Super Mario Brothers movie. That said, Matt, I do think it is so bad that it's worth watching just to poke fun of how bad this movie is. Now let's go take a look at another video game movie. This time, the people who were adapting it actually liked the game and actually wanted to be somewhat faithful to the story. However, the story itself would not fit in a movie that well, but fits the game perfectly, and that's Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time. Now, for those who have played the game, it's basically tells the story of this prince who finds a magic dagger and is tricked into releasing the Sands of Time, which basically turns everybody in his castle into zombies. He's protected because he has the dagger, and then a princess that he's just captured and has every reason to want to kill him has also remained unaffected, and they have to go out and defeat a treacherous vizier so they can get the hourglass back. It's kind of great survival horror almost type gameplay, even though the game itself is more of an action platformer. It has that setup. The only person who can help him is a person who has every right to want to kill him. In the movie, they keep a lot of those aspects, except for the fact of the whole zombie thing, so he can have an adventure, and then they throw in brothers, family, and all this other stuff. And then, of course, the action does go in with the game. They use a lot of parkour and a lot of swashbuckling in the action. So it was obvious that the people who adapted that movie did understand the game. And I did go see this with my mother, who doesn't play video games, and she enjoyed the movie well enough. My thought is that's probably the best American adaptation of a video game movie, but I'd still rather spend an hour and a half playing Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time rather than watching the movie. And I do believe it kind of flopped. But that's the American way of doing things. Like I said, try to get the broad audience, and if you have to take everything out that made the game, well, too bad. The gamers are just going to have to suck it up, and we'll deal with their geeky responses later. Then there's the Japanese way, which I think is a little bit better in some ways, at least as a gamer, but not really. It still oftentimes leads to marketing crap. But basically, when it comes to Japanese, when it comes to anime, their kind of philosophy is we're making this either to do an animated version of what's in the game, or we're doing something to expand the game. A good example of this would be Tales of Vesperia: First Strike. Now, this movie's based on Tales of Vesperia. If you haven't played that game and you watch this movie, you're going to be lost. You're not going to understand the characters. They don't really introduce Yuri and Flynn because they've already figured you've experienced these characters in the game. You know their past. You know Yuri was an ex-soldier and Flynn is a do-gooder, and although they're best friends, they don't see eye to eye all that often. First Strike takes you back to the beginning of their story when Yuri was still in the army, and all the stuff that he encountered to make him want to quit and kind of become a rogue. It's an interesting movie, but like I said, there's a lot of stuff that if you haven't played the game, you won't get. For example, in one scene, Yuri's commander goes to see this little girl that just lives out in the woods that's really good at magic, and she's also really snotty. If you played the game, you realize that's Rita, and she's going to become an important part of Yuri's life in a few years once she grows up a little bit, but she's still going to have that nasty temper. Same thing with the woman Flynn talks to in the castle, Elise. But if you haven't played the game, you're not going to understand why the movie stops for these scenes or the importance of it connecting to a larger story. And so, therefore, like I said, the Japanese kind of went to aim for the target audience. As a gamer, I think that shows more respect. That said, does it make better movies? Not really. Tales of Vesperia: First Strike is not a terrible movie. If you're a fan of the game, you'll probably enjoy watching it at least once. But again, I'd rather spend my hour and a half playing Tales of Vesperia on the Xbox. So what is the correct way of making a video game, TV show, or movie? And that's to more go after the culture and the ideas that gamers care about. Now, I went back and said that the first movie that did this was almost 30 years ago, actually over 30 years ago, and that movie, if you hadn't figured it out, was Tron. Now, Tron isn't exactly about gaming as it is about computers and hacking. However, gaming does play a big part of that game story, and you see references to the games of that era that Tron was made all over the place in that movie. Same thing with Tron Legacy. And therefore it really goes into that culture. Hence why it's still popular 30 years later and has so many homages in series like Mega Man. And that's how Hollywood should be doing these movies. It's not based off a single game themselves and trying to adapt the story, because that ends up sucking, but rather going after the culture. Why do people play these games? Look at gaming as a whole, and Hollywood is starting to do that, and we're starting to get some pretty decent movies off of it. Disney released Wreck-It Ralph a few years ago. That one was a huge hit among gamers. It's one of my favorite movies. It's got a lot of classic game characters, but the main movie is focused on some original characters and how they live in their game world. Another movie coming out this summer that I am kind of anxious to see, it's an Adam Sandler movie, and when it comes to Adam Sandler, I either come out saying that was one of the best, funniest movies I've ever seen, or, oh my god, why did I waste $6 and there's 90 minutes of my life I'll never get back. For more information on what I mean, see Grown Ups for the former, see Grown Ups 2 for the latter. So it's kind of going to be tricky with him in it. However, the movie Pixel seems interesting. It's definitely got the game montages, Donkey Kong, Pac-Man, and its own original story tying it up. So I have hope that's going to be a decent movie. On another note, on the anime scene, you also have Sword Art Online. While that's not the best anime I've ever seen, nor is it an anime that I would recommend to everyone, it does do a good job in kind of delving into the gaming culture and looking more from the Japanese side. A lot of people complain about the gun arc in season 2, and that's kind of like, guys, that's not meant for a Western audience. That's kind of how the Japanese see our obsession with online first-person shooters, and no, to them they don't like it. So, I kind of expected that. But Sword Art Online does kind of go into the whole MMO and explore that and create its own world. And that's how I think Hollywood and all these people from both Japan and America should be making these movies. They shouldn't be making it about the games themselves, because trying to adapt these video games is impossible, because there's an interactive element to the games that you can't get in a passive experience of watching a movie. But rather focus on the culture, and there's a lot of gaming culture, from the mobile space to the MMORPGs to the shooters, that you can satirize. You can make a movie out of just exploring. It can be documentary, it can be educational, movies like The King of Kong. So there is a way to make a good video game movie. The trick is not to do simple adaptations. If you just try to take one game and make a movie from it, it's probably going to end up just making people go, there's 90 minutes of my life wasted that I could have used to actually play the game. So like I said, movie adaptations, bad, but being able to tap into that gaming culture, if Hollywood can do that, I think what we'll have is a whole line of really great movies aimed at gamers, and I really think that's what's going to be in the future. I really do see more movies like Wreck-It Ralph, Tron, and Pixels coming out, and I'm excited for it. Anyways, that's enough of my bloviating. If you have any opinions about this, feel free to leave them below. This is Tommy the Keyblade Master signing out.